Hi everyone. Today we got another continuation on this rising wedge pattern within this kind of broader bear flag setup. In my opinion, you can see here we did continue to grind towards this upper trend line. Technically we're above it. We'll see if that continues to hold, but let's take a look at the charts and give a quick summary as we head into the weekend. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. So Trump came out and said he is not worried about the bond market. He can say here, and honestly, this is probably not true. He said he doesn't want to be influenced by the bond market or the stock market when it comes to the tariff pause, especially when it comes to the reciprocal tariffs or the equivalent tariffs. He said that was not the reason. He's doing what comes up when it comes to the numbers, which I think is fair. I think the tariffs are probably not the best way, but I do think he needs to be a credible threat to force these countries to come to the negotiating table and even the playing field. Is this the best way of going about it? I think that remains to be seen, and I think we'll see what happens at the end of this current 90-day pause that we're waiting for. But right now, Trump is trying to hold firm, saying that he is not worried about that potential recession and the setups in the bond market. Moving over to fear and greed, we finished at a 35. Really strong push into the middle of regular fear. Surprisingly strong considering the price action that we saw over the last day was not super strong, but the indicators continue to improve here. You can see we're a little bit above that previous kind of peak with the low, higher, low setup. Nice little push there. Strength just barely curling up, not really moving a lot. Breadth still moving slightly higher. Put call ratio continuing to come down, but still extreme fear. Volatility hitting that critical point here on the 50-day. Is it going to bounce from there? We're at a critical point for markets. We'll see. Safe haven demand has neutralized. Interesting. Equities have held up relatively well over the last 20 days relative to bonds, and you can see that here, junk bonds in greed. I continue to say bonds are a good place to be. Moving over to the economic calendar, you can see the Michigan inflation expectations are super high. I don't think this is going to come to fruition, but if we get anywhere near these numbers, we are going to be in absolutely terrible shape. Consumer expectations came in a little better. Sentiment came in a little bit better, but these inflation numbers do make me nervous. Is this the one-time tariff bump? If it is anything more than that, markets are in for a rough span over the next year and potentially even 5 years. Moving over to the charts though, looking at the S&Ps, you can see that momentum bullish, RSI still above the 50 line. We managed to hold above it. Interesting, we're right at the top of this kind of pattern. Again, still very much a bearish structure with this downtrend here. We're above the 21. Are we going to get to that 55? Is that where we're going to culminate? That would take you all the way to the 564.95 area. Is this going to be the peak here before we pull back to the trend line down here? That would be interesting. Let's go ahead and extend that out. That would give you a target closer to the 528 area. Pull back maybe to the SMA, maybe hold some structure in there, but this is a short-term rising wedge. You can see it here on the hourly chart. Not great. Usually these are bearish patterns, even if you do get another push, maybe even as high as this, like I said, 566, somewhere in here. If you get that last push, I would expect that to pull back into this structure here. Right now, so far, we have held up really well, but I do think this is going to fail eventually. Do we hold the higher low? Certainly a possibility. Like I said, this trend structure in here, 523, 524, somewhere in there. Highly traded zone says we could hold in there, but eventually I do expect this to fail and then look for that setup for the potential continuation. If this breaks, that's going to be pretty terrible for markets. And then moving over to those tasty charts here for the SPY, you can see we continue to grind just barely below that upper ATR band. That's going to be at 552.79. We didn't quite touch it, but we're grinding along it, stuck between that upper band and that 8 EMA. A little bit of volume on the bullish push here, continues to hold above that midpoint. Still very much bullish conditions. Trailing stop is 534, so maybe we pull back to that area and hold up if it's going to do it. That would be interesting, but again, the upside is just not super strong in the short term. Want to see some kind of pullback, either in time, kind of let this grind out, or a pullback in price, give you a better setup. But this is just about peak in my opinion. Moving over to the Qs here, up 1.11%. Again, on the daily chart, we did get above there. Obviously, we filled those gaps now. We're looking to push towards that next zone, would be that kind of 476 area. Same kind of structure, though, on the hourly chart. If you do look at it on the hourly chart, I didn't draw it on here, but I probably should have. You can see how these pushes are slowly fading. We're right there at the trend line on the hourly chart, which is where we expected to get to. You can see that first push on the 12 o'clock candle was immediately a rejection, grinded back to it, or right at it on the hourly chart. This is the concern, right? Is that we're going to pull back from this area, come back to this kind of trend line structure in here around that 442 area, which would be a pretty substantial down move. That would give you about 6.5% down move potential. Again, I just think this is going to be peak, similar to what we saw here, right? You had a really strong push into the zone, pulled back to the lower band. Are we going to get that next push down just like we saw last time? That is the big concern, and I just don't think there's a ton of upside potential. Turning the levels on, you can see I do have a more important level here at 477.84. Again, maybe you get a wick to that level and then see the bigger rejection down to this lower area, certainly a possibility. But holding above this structure for this long does give me a little bit of bullish potential. Again, I just think we're extended. Moving over to the Tasty charts, you can see that upper ATR band is not as powerful on the Tasty charts for the Qs as it is on the SPY. We're just at that upper band, 472.24 is the level, 472.56 is the price. After hours, we're drifting just a little bit higher. Again, though, expecting this to pull back at least to the trailing stop around 452.99, kind of in the middle range here towards this kind of low consolidation before we had that stronger continuation. Either way, this is kind of peak, not a great time to be buying. Want to wait for some kind of pullback either in time or in price. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, the Russell was basically unchanged, up just 6 cents. This is more in line with kind of what I expected to happen today. The SPY and the NASDAQ actually held up okay. Wonder if that's on the back of Google earnings yesterday. Momentum bullish, RSI basically flat, price action flat, same resistance 195.15. And then similarly here on the Dow, up 10 cents, right at that 21 EMA. It is technically above it because the 21 downtrended, and we are now flat on the price action. Momentum bullish, RSI still below the 50. Is this going to be major resistance? Is this a wedge pattern? Still a potential setup there. Support, no change at 398.76, and then resistance 404.47. Moving over to the Mag 7. Mag 7 had a really strong day, 2.95%. Again, is that Google? We'll take a look at it here in a minute, but really strong push, got through the level 265, 273 is the next one. Came close to that level, 272.67 was the high, so we missed it just by a little bit. Held support after the retest, filled the gap, continuation to that next level. Looks like we're going to go to the high from 9 April, which is that key level. So really strong Mag 7. If this starts to lead us a little bit higher here, that could be a nice setup. Is this a full bottoming pattern? I don't think so quite yet, but you have to admit, double bottom, nice push to that midpoint has been quite strong. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft. Apple up just less than $1. Same region here, 207 to 211. No changes there, but Microsoft, nice push, got through the level 388.03. 394.22 is the key level. You can see that was the peak before. We got above the 55. Momentum slightly bullish. So I do like Microsoft here. Structurally, it does look a little bit better getting above these levels here. You can see Apple still a long way to go to that 55 EMA. Obviously, it didn't fall as much. You held them higher low here versus Microsoft. But some nice Microsoft outperformance yesterday and today. Moving over to Tesla and NVIDIA. Tesla had a massive day. There was some adjustments to self-driving coming out from the administration, and obviously that is super bullish for Tesla. You have a nice consolidation, probably some buying in here. Look at this volume coming through. Got above 280, 301.93 is the next level. We're right now here 284. You got the 200 there as resistance, but 301.93 is my next level, and I think that's probably where we're going. Probably going to be some follow through on Tesla in my opinion. So another big driver for markets here today, makes sense. And then NVIDIA had a good day as well, 4.3%. Again, Mag 7, pretty solid day across the board. Got above 106, that was the key level. Nice little entry there as well. Pushing towards that 116 if it can get there. 111 is the highly traded zone. Can we get above that? The trend line here, 115, and then my level, like I said, 116.70. Then moving over here to Amazon and Alphabet, just to follow up on these. They had really strong days yesterday. Alphabet, Amazon continuing there, 1.31%. Above that 188.61 level, pushing towards 191.64. Can this get the continuation? Certainly a possibility. Solid bottom in here. And then looking at Alphabet, it did go higher, did hit that 55 EMA at 168.23. The high of day was 168.24. So we touched it to the penny and then immediately gave a lot of that back. You can see to the high, it was about 4%, and then we ended up at about 1.5%. So there is still some weakness in Alphabet, even with the strong results. Did close higher. Maybe this is a first touch, higher low setup continuation, something like that would be interesting. But again, pretty good catalyst here, and I would expect the Mag 7 earnings to be pretty good, and I think markets will reward them. Moving over to staples and discretionary. Staples threw a big wick to the downside, but it ended up getting bought up, down only a quarter on the day after being down more than 1%. Momentum still fading. RSI, we did get a touch there. We'll see if that holds up or not. And then looking at discretionary, as you can see, continues to hold really strong on the day. Definitely risk on over the last 2 days, pushing above the level 197.16. Can we get here to 203.98? Certainly a possibility. I'm sure Tesla is driving this, Amazon driving this here on discretionaries, but either way, we're above these levels here. Looks strong to that 55 EMA at 203.26. Moving over to breadth. This is the concern here. Breadth was negative on the day. 20-day breadth completely negative, down 2.8%, down just 2 points. 68.14 is the level. We are stuck there for 3 days now. Momentum is super extended. RSI not quite there yet. But is this going to fade from here? I think that is a strong possibility. Similarly here on 50-day, basically flat, slightly negative, back below that 32.22 level. If you do put some structure on this as well, you can see the momentum here is fading. Is this a rising wedge as well? It seems like it is, and it seems like this is probably going to fall here soon. Moving over to bonds, J&K had another slightly positive day, up 17 cents, holding above the level 94.82. TLT gapped and dojied, nice move there, 65 cents. Still holding in the same zone, continues to be an opportunity. In my opinion, anywhere between 85.90 and 89.16 is an opportunity, and I do expect it to push ultimately towards that 100 level. I think that's probably where we're going ultimately, like I said, but for now, we're still hovering right in this consolidation base. Momentum bullish, RSI bullish. Moving over to volatility, you can see the VIX continues to fall towards that level that we said. 24.68 is the zone, 55 EMA in there as well, 24.15. I think this is where we're going to see a little bit of a bounce. So again, critical zone, is this the area where we see a pop on the VIX and a rejection in those rising wedge formations? Absolutely a risk, and definitely something to watch for here as we head into next week. Moving over to my accounts, I did not do anything again. Like I said yesterday, I was very concerned about that zone of resistance. Honestly, I was surprised to see how strong we were. It makes sense with the Mag 7 being as strong as it was, but again, major resistances, technical resistances, needs to get above there and show some conviction for me to re-enter markets to the long side. If we start to show rejection from there, the risk is about 6 to 7% to the downside, which I think is a bigger opportunity. Obviously, there's going to be a ton of earnings next week to be watching very closely, but again, on a technical basis, I just feel like we're going to go lower, and it's okay to be out of markets. If you feel the trade is lower and markets are not showing that structure yet, you can just sit and be patient and wait for the setup, and that's what I did here today. Let me know down in the comment section what you think of Trump's comments on the bond market. Do you think he actually doesn't care about bonds or the stock market, or is it all posturing for potential negotiations in the future? And what happens at the end of the 90 days? Do markets crater again, or will we get another pause? Let me know. Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video. Make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.